Welcome to KGXT, Gen X Talks podcast, live from Central California.
Making plans with the boys. I'm gonna hit the town. Yeah, I'm gonna make some noise. I'll push past the pain and my wounded pride. I'm gonna live it up. Yeah, stay out all night. But sure, I've had some better times. And I can't count all the tears I've cried. And maybe down my last time. Yeah, but the blues took me just fine.
Need to get done.
All right, welcome to Gen X Talks. Welcome to the podcast. Now, hold on. Before I know what you're going to say, where's your wife? Where's Gen X Mom? Where's Mama X? Okay, listen to me, all right? This isn't that podcast. See, we do those podcasts. This is an interview. It doesn't take the place of a podcast. If you want to listen to her beat me up and kick the shit out of me for an hour, that's coming up next. This is a special edition. If you don't like the interviews, just skip them. All right. There's a ton of people that are digging these things. It's a new direction with a twist. All you got to do, if you don't like it, move on. If you do like it, keep listening. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in to Gen X Talks, the podcast. We're broadcasting from KGXT Studios 200 feet below occupied California. And as you know, we have been doing some interviews, some one-on-one with some cool cats. We have another special guest. You guys know who he is. His reputation precedes him. Dr. McDreamy. That's not his real name. That is just some crazy, stupid, made-up name that my wife put on a bunch of T-shirts and sold to all of her girlfriends. All right, well, that part's over. Now we're going to get to the meat. This is a friend of mine. We've been friends forever, and we'll get to him in just a second on where he's from and what he's been doing. But I got to tell you right now, I'm really excited to bring him in. He is what we call the fight doctor. He is Dr. McDreamy. I just call him Damon. His name's Damon Zavala. So let's bring him in. Damon, it's been a crazy couple of days around here going down memory lane, has it not?
I love it.
Just the uniqueness of where you and I grew up and the friends and the family. It's odd how we can go back and tie all of our family histories together. It really is.
And the village people. That was fun to talk about.
Yeah, but you say that, and there's 17,000 people go.
Don't know what that is.
The village people, the YMCA. No, not those village people. Village Christian was a private school we went to years and years ago. It's tucked in the hills, nestled in the hills. If you say nestled, it sounds wonderful. If I say Village Christian's wedged in the hills, then it doesn't sound so sexy, does it? Nestled in the hills in Sun Valley, California. We all grew up there in and around that area and went to that school. Damon Zavala, it turned out to be a doctor. I turned out to be a mechanic working on cars, and he turned out to be a mechanic working on people. You know what, growing up, I didn't know you ever wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah, my mom is the one that told me, about being a doctor, and I was like, you're crazy. I come from boxers or bricklayers. That's really our lineage,
More
right?
salt of the earth, do it with your hands type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, just like my dad said, I haven't worked a day in my life because I don't do manual labor.
No,
but
your dad's right. I got to agree with him on that.
I've done some manual labor. I've done that, but anyway.
But when your mom said doctor, didn't a bell go off in your head like, that's way too much school? That's a lot of work.
I didn't think of it that way. I didn't know how I was going to accomplish it, but she brought up things. Well, what about anesthesia? They make good money. That's not what I wanted to do. So I grew up watching fights.
Yeah.
So MMA wasn't a thing back then, but it was boxing.
Sure.
So you remember Muhammad Ali being on ABC Wide World of Sports,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
So we would watch. I remember being on he'd be laying down, I'd lay on his stomach, and we're watching the fights. Those are the memories I have.
Now, not Muhammad Ali. You weren't laying on Muhammad Ali.
My dad. Yeah. So my dad introduced me to this. So his father was a professional boxer. So he was one of 7 brothers. There's a long lineage of boxers in our family.
I got you.
So watching fights was just something we did, and it sounds weird to say, but it's in your blood.
Yeah.
And I dabbled in it later on in life, but growing up, I'd watch Ferdy Pacheco. Does that ring a bell?
The name does, but I'm not placing that. Who was
So
that?
Fernando Pacheco Jimenez, he was the personal physician for Muhammad Ali.
Oh, okay.
He was
All right.
also in his corner as a cut man.
Okay.
So he ended up leaving Muhammad Ali because he was trying to talk Muhammad Ali into retiring because
Right.
he was getting to that point where I don't want to see you get beat up anymore. So he says, I can't do this anymore. So he turns into a color commentator.
Okay.
So that's what he did, but he was known as the Fight Doctor.
Really?
So I have a license plate that says Fight Doctor. You probably saw it
Yeah,
out there.
uh-huh.
So I feel a little bad about that just for the fact that I am calling myself the Fight Doctor, but the original Fight Doctor is Ferdy Pacheco.
Well, I would say you're more paying homage, to that. You're not stealing it from him.
That's what I'm doing.
But-
And other people might say, no, there's, they might not even know who that guy is.
No, they might not. But let me back up.
Yeah.
So you're not just saying when you answered your mom's question, I want to be a doctor. You said, I want to be a fight doctor.
Well, so backing up, I did pretty well in school, got good grades.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things, well, maybe this guy can kind of break the mold of doing construction and
Right.
do something in school. And so my dad would take me to work with him in construction. He wanted me to, see what it was like to get, down and dirty and get
Oh, yeah. He wanted you to put in
he
12
wanted
hour
me to,
days.
He did, and,
Yeah.
and so he kind of said he did that so I would continue on the path of school.
Right.
So that was true. So I'm thinking, fight doctor, hey, doctor, medicine, yeah, I like that. I was into health. I was into, doing those kind of things that got into vitamins and helping people out. And I thought,
Right.
yeah, I could do this, but I didn't know how I was going to do that. I didn't think about the time in school and what it was going to take.
But you narrowed it down to you didn't consider being a pediatrician or, you knew it's like if you do medicine, you knew where you wanted to go.
So there's another piece to that as well. You know about my trach that I had when I was 7 months old.
I remember growing up with you in school. And let me explain something. We went to the same private school together. It was a private school in a real small area of Los Angeles County, and it was from kindergarten through 12th grade. And there's actually students that made it all the way. I left the school. I was asked to leave under terrible circumstances, complete misunderstanding, not my fault. But there are people like you and my wife who went from kindergarten to 12th grade. What was there? Was there about 30 or 3 of you that made it the whole way?
Something like that. Called
That's-
lifers.
Yeah, lifers that went all the way through. So I know what you're saying with that, where it's coming from. That's what I was getting at. The trach was, I knew Damon, Dr. Zavala. I knew him from 5 years old. We've literally known each other 50 years, and I knew when we were kids, you had a little indentation in your throat.
I was called belly button neck.
Well, you
didn't do that.
No.
No.
I remember getting angry at someone who did when we were like in 5th or 6th grade because I thought it was dumb, but it never even occurred to me to ask you, hey, what happened to your neck or what? I just saw it, remember seeing it as a kid and it's like, yeah, all right, some kids got red hair, some kids got freckles, you got a thing on your neck and whatever happened never even occurred to me.
Yeah,
But
you didn't have to say it though, but people would look, and that's what bothered me.
really?
Yeah, absolutely. They'd look straight down, like women probably with their chest. Hey, I'm up here.
They're
They're looking at my neck.
I never, all those years, I never noticed it bothering you. You never,
I was an angry kid.
really?
Oh, absolutely. Got in a lot of fights.
I never knew it to bother you, never even knew it to be a conversation point. So part of this conversation about your trach took you where in life? What?
Right. So 7 months old, Hong Kong flu. Found out that I had an underdeveloped trachea called tracheal atresia. I turned blue. They rushed me to the emergency room. Story goes, the resident under the attending went to go get a tracheotomy on me and did it got the wrong spot. Dr. Cohen comes in and pushes him out of the way. You're going to kill this kid, and does it right, saves my life. So I had a trach for 2 years. So
Wow.
Yeah, 2 years. So
How
that
old
was
were you when you had that?
7 months to a little over 2 years.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it wasn't when we were in school ever.
No, but
Okay.
the scar was
The scar
there.
is what we're referring to.
That's
yeah.
right, the belly
Yeah.
button neck scar.
I'll tell you, I've got to be honest with you. There was a period of time we didn't see each other for quite a while. People grow up and get married and go along their ways and do stuff. And I remember the first time that we bumped into each other years later. I never even thought to look at your neck. In fact, it wasn't until later, and then my wife had said something to me about like, oh, Damon got that thing fixed on his neck, and I was like, oh.
10th grade.
I was like, oh, I guess, yeah. I mean, I didn't even think, it's not like, boy, when I see Damon again, I'm going to check out his scar in his neck. It never even occurred to me.
It became a thing in my family. Apparently, that happened for a reason. So I don't want to get too, soppy here, but my dad became saved as a believer for me going through that. So he kind of turned his life around when that happened to me.
I got you. So it can happen, the events like that with your kids, for sure.
So me getting plastic surgery in 10th grade kind of sealed that up, and there was no more really reminder for them. And it was selfish for me because I didn't like, and I was very self-conscious, but I didn't realize what it did to other people, and said, hey, you're kind of getting rid of this. It's like getting rid of a monument that, hey, that's history.
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
Well, you even told me that you didn't like how it was repaired in 10th grade, and you got it fixed again later or something.
Yeah, there were some what they call dog ears that stuck out, and I had to kept kind of had to massaging it to get those stuck down. But anyways, it was better than that. I wasn't called belly button neck anymore.
So you get this idea some point in early on in life, you weren't in your 30s, you were younger, that you want to be a doctor. You want to go towards the fight doctor thing. It wasn't like you said, well, I'm going to be an anesthesiologist, maybe I'll be a pediatrician, maybe I'll be a chiropractor. You kind of knew if you were getting into medicine, it was going to be in this direction, right?
That's right. But again, not knowing, I had no family members. You know how doctors usually, have people in the family that, that's
right.
Kind of the lineage. I didn't have that, so I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So I just said, well, I know I got to go to school for a while. Okay, I'll do that. I'll go to college.
When someone met my mom, of course, she mentioned that to me. Well, do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer? And all I thought about was more school. I cannot do. I was not a good student. That turned me off. Anything that was going to require me in a classroom, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, it wasn't English, right? I couldn't stand English classes, and so it wasn't going to be that. It was going to be something I was interested in. So anyway, so I knew I wanted to do that. I got into Cal State Northridge.
Cal State Northridge.
Well, that's why we called it, because you didn't go anywhere from that. It was just like the bottom of the barrel. I tried to get into, I aimed high, thinking, let's go to these Naval Academy and this, that. We had a counselor, Miss Bryce, I think you probably remember her. So she pretty much laughed in my face when I asked her if, I wanted to shoot high and try to go there. She just said, there's no way, son. You're not doing that. Well, I want to be a doctor. And she laughed again. That's not happening. Oh, yeah. So I kind of used all those things, and I'm leaving out a lot in the story about, I was told you wouldn't amount to a hill of beans in quotation marks, So you use that fuel for fire, kind of like, I'll show you.
Sure, yeah.
So it was necessary for me to go, I'll show you.
Did you apply at a lot of different schools, or just Northridge, just Cal State?
After I was told by the counselor that, this is just not going to happen, don't waste your time or money, it was Cal State Northridge, and I was, I didn't want to go away to college.
Sure, I got you.
So I had to save money, we could commute. So it took 7.5 years to get out of there.
Wow.
I worked 60 hours a week at VSP parking in Burbank by the Burbank Airport. It was a decent job. Failed organic chemistry because I had to work. And so, it's like, this is unfolding as like, this ain't going to happen.
Sure.
Right?
It sure was difficult by that point. Even just to get there was tough.
It was. And so I just, all of my, this is going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. So you had to take the MCAT. You had to do, so many classes to, for undergrad just to be able to take and sit for a test.
Right.
So all those things. I didn't do well in MCATs, and it was just, I have a learning disorder, processing disorder. That, some people call it dyslexia. It's a form of that. So I had to overcome certain things, but still, my head was down. I'm going to do this.
I want to be clear on something for the listeners, and I'm probably going to put this back to the beginning too. Is that I want to take this podcast at some point to all of, I want to hear the famous people that you've met, you've interacted with, you've been in Las Vegas and Reno. It's taken you 20 years to get to the position where you've known all these people. You've been rubbing elbows or a footstep away from some of the biggest names in boxing and MMA as it's grown. When MMA started at zero, at nothing to where it is now, you've been right along the way. You've been part of that, and you're a big fan of it too. You watch all that stuff. You love what it's doing. I want to let everybody know that I'm grinding through how Dr. Zavala got to where he is before we just jump in with, what was Floyd Mayweather like? I'm telling you, I don't want to let you guys think that this is all just going to be, book work. But at the very end, I'm not just going to throw out there, we're not going right to the great stuff right now. I want to build a foundation. This is a friend of mine for 50 years. It's important to me, and it should be important to you, on how someone takes time and keeps going to get someplace. That's the dry read of it. All right. So just relax, grab a drink, settle back in your chair, shut up, and just listen. We'll do all the talking. All you got to do is listen. All right. So where did you go after CSUN? There was more schooling after that, right?
So the earthquake happened in Northridge,
Right.
1994, January 17th, 4:31 a.m. Remember that. The house came off the foundation. Ended up living on the lawn with my dog and a 357 Magnum. My friends all left. So I'm sitting there, and what do I do now, right? So that started a pretty painful process of where do I go in life? And I was putting in my applications for med school and ended up getting waitlisted, meaning I didn't get in and had to wait another year. So I'm like, oh, what do I do here? So a lot of couch surfing, a lot of self-reflection, and ended up working at a boxing gym called Executive Boxing in Pasadena. It was right on Arroyo Parkway and Colorado, where the Rose Parade goes by, right? Mm-hmm. So it was down underneath in the below the Chamber of Commerce building. And I worked with Adam Carolla. I worked with Mike Weaver. He was
Really?
the ex-heavyweight champ. Got to spar with him. Got to spar with Troy Weaver, professional boxers. So sparred with Adam Carolla and some of his guys there. I mean, pretty cool. I got to meet and rub elbows there. And
Yeah.
these are people who are like, well, Adam wasn't big back then, but it was Mike Weaver.
Right.
He got the title from Big John Tate. Like, wow, this is crazy.
And there he is.
Yeah, here he
Wow.
is, and I'm sparring with him, and he's taking it easy on me, hitting me in the body and things of that nature. 240 pounds, ripped. Just he was supposed to fight Holyfield at the time because Holyfield had that hole in the heart. You remember that something about
yeah.
that? And he was going to go to China and do that, and then he had a miracle. His heart was fixed, and so that never happened.
Gotcha.
So I ended up, doing pretty good. I actually dabbled in boxing and did very well. I actually started with Muay Thai, kickboxing, and then went boxing, and then, kind of got into med school and had a big party from all the
Where'd you
people.
go? Where'd you get in?
I went to COMP, College of Osteopathic Medicine of the Pacific. Later turned out to be Western University of Health Sciences in Pomona.
Okay.
So Pomona. So it didn't go too far.
No, not too far. Yeah, a little further south.
Yeah, so that was a big deal. I mean, the best med school is the one you get into, right?
Yeah, because
So
you're there.
and that was true. It was a private school, so I was just piling on loans, but I'm in.
Yeah.
I made it.
Now,
Right?
could you do it?
Could I do?
Could you do the work? Because now that's big time. Now it's not messing around.
Yeah, a few people know this. My wife knows this, so I can share it. So I started dating a girl in med school. She was the year behind me, and she was one of the gunner type that wanted to, get ahead on the next year. So
Right.
she would read my notes to me, and so I was able to get through school.
Your wife, wife and I spent some time alone together talking, and we did a podcast, but we had some time in between the program stuff, and she mentioned something to me that kind of rang a bell about you, like it turned on a light bulb. She said, you have almost a photographic memory, like an eidetic memory on things you hear.
Right.
And I've never heard that before, but now that makes sense because sometimes you and I are talking and you'll bring up something. You go, no, you remember what you said? I'm like, what I said when? You go, no, we were in Reno back in 2007 and I'm like, how are you remembering? And you said, and then you repeat 12 sentences verbatim. I'm like, did I say, yeah, maybe I said that. I never thought about you remembering things that way until she brought it up.
And Marcy doesn't like that very much.
God, that's it, man. That's usually a chick thing. Chicks are the ones who can bring up what you said 12 years ago.
Right.
And for you to be able to strike one for the men, man.
That's
well
right.
done.
That's right. The reading part wasn't going to happen. I tried to do it the good old fashioned way, and it just wasn't working. It was too much information. They just piled on you, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this.
I would have stopped right there. You're talking about there wasn't a lot of books on tape back then, and I'm sure nobody transcribed and did a books on tape for college, medical classes.
Didn't exist.
Yeah, boy, what a hill to look at and say I'm still going to climb that. I mean, that's incredible, the fortitude. So how long were you there?
It was 4 years. 2 years was in the classroom setting, and then 2 years was out doing rotations. And I took that opportunity to travel.
Really?
Went to Texas, went to Tahoe. We grew up going to Tahoe for vacations, and I wanted to go back there. I knew I wanted to be back there somewhere, so I did a rotation in orthopedics there and went to UC Davis. I mean, just everywhere. Just kind of lived out of the car, lived out of an apartment, someone's house, a friend I knew, ex-girlfriend, whatever.
So when you finally get settled in, you're getting your residencies and thing under your belt. You're getting to where you start to get you out on your own, so to speak, where you can be have your own job or your own. If you want to, you could have hung your own shingle when you get to a certain point and you got your degree. And I'm sure you went into some hospitals. Where did you chose the Reno Tahoe area? Was that where you first went?
I did. I only applied to one residency.
Oh.
Which is, people thought I was nuts. I mean, just what are you doing? You have to. It's a match. They call it a match for a reason. If you don't match, you're done.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? So I interviewed. First of all, I got in med school. Knew I wanted to go somewhere around Tahoe. Reno was the place. UNR. So in the interview process, they said, why? They're used to canned answers. They're used to. I want to help people and give back to the community.
Right.
I'm not from there. So we talked about boxing. We talked about astronomy. We talked about all the things I'm interested in. And I like Tahoe. I want to be here. So it's location, location, location. And, I got
answers.
in. I got in.
Wow.
So, and it happened to be in Nevada, Nevada's the fight capital of the world. They used to have huge fights in Reno. They don't, not so much these days, but of course, Las Vegas is probably the new capital.
So you get in there and you're building a life. Eventually you get a wife and you get kids, and you're still, you're always building, you're always learning, you're specializing, you're picking up stuff as you go. But part of you was always in the boxing idea. Now, you told me one time, now here you are, you're living in northern Nevada. Mm-hmm. And like you just mentioned, that kind of the capital of the world. If you're not over in Atlantic City, Las Vegas is boxing. And you had told me, and I'm going to mess up how you told me this, but there was some prejudice. There was some north versus south type of feeling that, if you were doing the fight doctoring stuff in Reno, it's like, well, we don't need you down here in Vegas. You're from Reno. Just stay in Reno. We got our own guys. That type of a thing. Did that even slow you down?
No, that's fast forwarded a little bit, just for the fact that how was I going to get into being a ring doctor in the first place?
Yeah, and and I'm not saying you just went in to be the fight doctor, but for you to even have the mindset of looking south, you told me that was kind of like a don't bother, they don't want us down there.
Well, right, and what you're talking about is the Nevada State Athletic Commission is what I'm a part of.
Okay.
But in order to get on the Nevada State Athletic Commission as a ringside physician, you had to put your time in. You can't just go right on there and do the pro level stuff. So
what do you have to do?
Amateurs. I worked every amateur fight there was in a 50-mile radius of Reno.
Really?
I was in residency. And back then in 2000, I was able to sit for and get my license and be a licensed physician.
Right.
Nowadays, they don't allow that, but I took my boards and passed it, and so I was a full-fledged doctor and could moonlight.
Okay.
But I'm also in residency. So I've always had a number of jobs. So it's like 14 now, but back then I was starting to build that. So I don't exactly know how this happened, but there's a guy, Mike Martino, he was well known. If ask anybody in Reno, it's like 1 degree of Mike Martino. He's the guy that sought me out, heard that I was interested in boxing. There was an 80-year-old doctor that had just passed away that was doing all the fights. He was retired.
Oh.
So he was doing all the amateur fights.
All right.
And they didn't have anybody anymore. So he heard about me, called me up. He goes, "You want to do that?" I go, "Yeah." I said, "I'll do this." First.
And this was as you were putting in your time already. This wasn't the first thing. You were already trying to.
I hadn't worked a fight ever. But
Not any.
No, nothing.
Okay.
So he was the one that got me, and he goes, "You want to work the Silver State Games in Reno?" I said,
So let me be clear on that. So when you said you had to put in your time doing amateur gigs for 50 miles,
well,
this guy got you into
he's
that?
the one that got me into that.
Okay,
so
all right, I'm with you.
Yeah, right. So he contacted me. "Do you want to do this?" Sure enough. So when I started doing that, I was now the guy. I was the
Northern, yeah, the Reno.
Northern. So yeah, the redheaded stepchild.
Right, I got
and
you.
I was up there doing that, and so I told you, going back to the fact that I had cousins. I had a cousin, Rudy Zavala, in the '90s, who was number 2 in the world.
Really?
Yes, he fought on the undercard of Holyfield Holmes. I mean, he was the champ, Sean O'Grady, on Tuesday night fights on. I think it was USA Network or something that was always on. He was always the featured guy. He fought at the Forum,
right,
where the Lakers played.
Sure.
So he was a big name.
Sorry,
if you followed
let's be
boxing.
clear. That's the Fabulous Forum.
The Fabulous Forum,
Fabulous
yes.
Forum. Yeah, we don't want to.
And it was
being
fabulous.
natives of there. We need to.
That's right. That's right. So he was well known, and if you followed boxing, you knew Rudy Zavala.
So you said he was ranked number 2. Did he never get a shot, or
He did get a shot. Kennedy McKinney, Tracy Patterson, those are big names. He lost to them, and he had kind of went on a streak. As you get up to that ladder, there's so many. The cream of the crop is up there.
Yeah.
And he fought really good fights.
But he got a shot.
He got a shot.
Wow.
He got a shot. And so, anyways, Mark Ratner was my executive director of the Nevada State Commission at the time. And the story goes, I wasn't there, but he goes, "Hey, who's this Dr. Zavala that's doing all these amateur fights?" Because they have to be sanctioned under the Nevada State Athletic Commission as an amateur. So my name of record, and I had no idea this was happening. So my name was getting into this office, and like, who is this guy? And he goes, "Well, is he related to Rudy Zavala?" And he goes, "Matter of fact, he is. It's his cousin." I said, "Wow. Well, does he want to be on the commission?" He goes, "Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
he does."
he
So I
does.
was the youngest doctor to be on the commission for that time and ever. So
Was it tough when you said, and I know you enjoy boxing immensely, so sometimes when you're doing what you love, it's not work. But when you had to grind out all those amateur fights to start putting in your time and building it, was it ever a burden on you at all?
with a smile.
Good to hear.
Permagrin. I think $35 was the pay that they would give you for gas or what have you,
little
driving
per
to,
diem.
yeah. So, we'd get that $35, and back then that was actually very helpful. So I'd put it in the gas tank.
Well, clearly you were doing this for the money. Obviously,
yeah,
just,
obviously.
you're trying to.
Right. So you put enough of those under your belt, and they're USA Boxing. They're little kids, and they're entertaining. I'd bring my wife to some of these fights, and we had fun with it. Bring the kids, whatever. So it was to get an opportunity to be on the Nevada State Athletic Commission to work big pro fights.
Wow.
I was like, this is literally a dream come true.
And you weren't there yet. You just got on board. You were still a Northerner, right? You hadn't done anything down south?
No, but right. So there was a couple of doctors that took me under their wing, Flip Homansky, some of the big known fight doctors at the time. And so they kind of took me under their wing, and they kind of, just mentored me. And I was just all ears. I was a sponge. I read the medical aspects of boxing. to kind of learn to see what this is all about.
Sure.
But I also boxed. I
Yeah.
also
I was going to
in the
say,
ring.
this is a fit made in heaven.
This is something that was more. This is common sense. This is, you know when someone's hurt, you can see in their eyes. You know what you're looking at.
Right.
So I learned the tricks of the trade, from some of these folks. But yeah, that was.
But now, as you're building, now we kind of got off onto the topic that, of course, that's why we're all here. But during the time you're doing this and you're kind of trying to build this career to become the fight doctor so you can get that license plate one day, you're still doing all of your, you had a real job with real patients all the time, a full-time job over here.
I had to.
Yeah.
You can't pay. It doesn't pay the bills. No. That's the thing. Yeah. So again, I literally have 14 jobs at this time, and I am able to work those fights. They don't pay much.
No.
So it's because of the love of it. I mean,
did you at this time, before you made any sort of a big jump towards doing things in Las Vegas, did the big fights just kind of go away from Reno completely? Did you get any good fights up there? And why are they gone? What happened to Reno?
That's a good question. The promotions, for whatever reason, the casino, it's above my pay grade, but it's has to do with the owners of the casinos and how they're going to promote it, and the pay. I don't get too much into that. They've tried. They've had some ESPN fight nights. They've had some decent shows up there, but Vegas is the capital. Vegas is the capital.
So during that time when you're grinding it out and doing all those things, there's nothing really big came across your plate up there. There just wasn't.
My first pro fight was at Caesars Palace, Las Vegas.
And who was that?
Rafael Marquez.
Wow.
And I'll never forget it. Don King sat behind me, and I'm listening to this guy, Don King, who I've seen. I was a big fan of Tyson, and I knew who Don King was.
Sure.
He's sitting behind me, and he's telling stories about doing time in prison and this, that, and the other. And I was just watching the fights, but also had my head tilted back, and I'm listening
just
to Don
a little
King.
Bit like this. Like, what'd you say back there, buddy?
I'm like literally pinching myself. Like, I'm here. I'm doing this.
And that's your first big fight.
Big fight.
And you are literally sitting with and rubbing elbows right around you is the top. That is the top of boxing at that time.
It was.
Wow.
It was. Yeah. So I did that. And of course, I was already hooked prior to that. I just couldn't believe I was there. I would say things like, I do this for free. And everyone's like, shut up. Don't say that. You need to get paid for this. But because it wasn't much. But
no, I got you.
Yeah. But I would.
Okay, so let's recap. So you and I go to private school together. I get kicked out. You graduate. You end up at Northridge, where you grind out, what'd you say, 7.5 years there. Yeah. Then you move out and you're down in Pomona for another 4.
Yeah,
right?
2 years really, and then 2 years doing my rotations all over.
2 years in rotations. Then you end up in Reno. You're doing your residency.
Right.
Now, from the time you get to Reno till the time you have that first fight in Las Vegas, how long did you have to pay your dues in there? Just going round and round. Was it a short time or?
So 2000, I was working amateur fights, and then 2003, I got on the commission. But it's not like I stopped doing those amateur fights. I was, what you were talking about before, I'm at the North. There's something like 13 to 14 doctors from North and South, but only 3 of them in the North. Oh. So I was only one of the 3 in the North. So if we had a fight up there, sure enough, I was going to get the bill. But to be called and to have the promoters pay for me to fly down there, put me up, give me a per diem, they don't want to do that.
No, why would
they? Right?
They've got guys.
They got
there.
Plenty of guys down there. Why would they bring this guy down there?
So how many years did you put in your time? Was that just 3 years of grinding that out?
Well, I was grinding to put it. Yeah, right. So I worked almost every weekend.
Yeah, I was going to say that all the time.
I had to pay other residents to cover my weekend call, so I could go work and get $35.
Wow, wow. Boy, Damon, you just, every time we talk about this stuff, one thing becomes more clear every time. And it's when you see something that you want that has a little bit of adversity in front of it, you have no problem going after it. You just said you had to pay other doctors to cover your shift. Excuse me, can I pay you to do this? I got to go make $35 watching two guys beat themselves up. And you did it, but you put in the time.
Right.
Wow.
Well, I mean, again, if your goal was to be a fight doctor, you'd do anything for it.
I'm with you on that. I get what you're saying. I do. I should, by now you think I'd get tired of saying it amazes me when I hear you, because it's the same story, and it's nothing. But I have nothing but admiration for how you're getting, and especially right now in the story, how you're getting along to where you are. Now, I got to ask you something. This popped in. I'm sure this popped into listeners' minds also. When you say there's 13 fight doctors that can, that can handle fights, and you come down from Reno, you get chosen, hey, come down and we want to come have, did that rub anybody the wrong way? I'm not asking if you made enemies, but somebody had to raise their hand and go, hey, why are you calling this dude? I'm right here.
That's right. Yeah. It's, there's politics in everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And there's some people that have been doing this forever. There's some people that are trying to be the alpha, trying to stake their claim. And, but there's 4 doctors at each fight. So it's like, all right, well, if they're there and I'm here, what's the big deal? Right. But if I just kick someone else out that could have been there and you're flying me down. So it really comes down to availability. Right.
Right.
If you're available, well, they should get it. But there were some people that I think took a liking to me on the commission, and when, hey, he's a decent guy, let's see if we can get him, down here.
Well,
so
something you brought up to this, I'm piecing together our history, our past, you and I talking. And we were in Reno one time, and I forget what casino we were at, sitting there having a drink at a bar one time, and we talked about this, and I was picking your brain, asking questions, and you and I'm going to mess this story up, so please correct me when I'm done. But you had said that one of the ways you got into doing all this was you always said yes. You were always available. Like if some guy says, well, if the commission calls up 2 doctors and say, hey, there's a fight card over here. Well, that's not a big enough name. I don't want to go over there. Those aren't, those aren't top name people. And you just said yes.
Right.
You just said, I'll go. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, I'll do it.
There's a lot of cherry picking for, they'll look ahead. There's an event schedule on the Nevada State Commission website.
Right.
What's coming up? Oh, T-Mobile or MGM Grand or Mandalay Bay.
Sure.
There's a big fight coming. Well, there's a small Sam's Town casino, 5 fights and whatever.
Right.
It's just nothing, not on TV, this, that. Do you want to do that? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm going to say, if you just said that you think that some people on the commission took a liking to you, and then I already know that you said yes to everything that they offered you. Mm-hmm. It's like, yes, I'll go. I don't mind. Yes, I'll go. You're doing what you love.
With a smile.
With a smile. There had to be people there that go, look, man, this guy just shows up. He's not cherry picking fights. Right. He's showing up. And he's good. He's got the experience, because by now, if you're picking up all the fights in Reno that you can, you're now picking up fights in Vegas that people just don't want to do, and you love it. The commissioner's got to be looking at these going, this guy's got 9,000 fights under his belt. I mean, he goes anywhere we ask all the time. Yeah. And you're not making waves with anybody. You're not one of those guys going knocking on the door. Well, how come I didn't get that fight? How come you didn't ask me to go there? Which, in the world of politics, there has to be some of that going on. You're quietly doing your job, man.
But like you said, the waves. So I'd come down, and all of a sudden I was coming down a little more often. They'd see me again. And I got some guys looking at me going, you're down here again? Like, I know what that means, right? Well, what are you doing? Get out of here, kid. You're bothering me.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I get that. And I had to, but I'm still going to come, right? You're going to ask me, I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
So
nothing has stopped you so far.
Right. So, I had to deal with that and some personalities, but for the most part, we got along with pretty much everybody there.
All right. So let's take a pause before we move on with the career and what you did and where it went from here. Why don't you tell me, I'm saying that politely, like tell all of us, but what does it mean to be a fight doctor? What do you have to do? What's your responsibilities?
Yeah, that's so a fight doctor. I already told you, for big fights, there's 4 doctors at each venue. So boxing or MMA, there's a red corner, a blue corner. You see those and the turnbuckles and the corners, those, and the guy come out with, with red side, blue side.
Sure.
So there's a lead for every fight, the lead doctor.
Lead doctor.
That usually sits on the commission side. If you ever watch boxing and you can see the people sitting in that front row and all those heads there.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the commission side.
Ah.
And that's where the lead will sit. The number 2 doctor will be on the other side, usually on the media side.
Okay.
And then you have 2 more doctors whose duty is to take the fighters after the fight and do a post-fight physical while the lead and the second stay ringside.
Right.
They always have to have a doctor at ringside in order to keep them going. And some of these are plowing through that you have to get them, you can't have a doctor in the back.
Right.
So there's 4 doctors at every fight. So the day before, there's physicals. For the UFC, it's 9 a.m. Thursday morning or Friday morning before a Saturday fight. So we're there doing the physicals on all the fighters that come through, and we have to see if they're going to be fit for the we have to call it or not there, and sometimes we have to make that hard call.
You've had to make a call that the fighter wasn't able to go on.
Yeah, but
medically,
but it's a no-brainer. The janitor can call that one. I mean, the guy's on the ground puking and chest pain or whatever. That's not happening. So, so we get there the day before, do the physicals, show up an hour early before the fights start, and then we get to our assigned positions 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever.
So the fighter passes the physical the day before.
Correct.
So there's not all the ones in the movies where you see them going into the locker room after the guy's all taped up and ready to go, and a doctor's looking at him one more time. That doesn't happen.
No, that's not. No, because they weigh in the day before, and you have to see them at their worst.
Okay.
So when they're cutting weight.
Yeah,
you're seeing them at their worst, and that's why if they had too much of a weight cut, too hard of a weight cut, it's sometimes they've done it too much,
right?
And they're out. So, but they have that 24 hours usually to rehydrate and get better. So some of those that are on the fence, we'll kind of let them go and see they get better. Sure enough, they're on the fight. So we show up. We do work the fight, and then we have to give a suspension. If you're in the back doing the post-fight physical, you're giving the suspensions of the fighters depending on what happened, their cuts or, potential broken bone or what have you.
Right.
But the lead doctor and the second, so first and 1 and 2 doc, we're making decisions inside the ring or the cage. If a referee sees a cut or sees something that he's concerned about, he motion's over, come on in.
Right.
We'll come up in there. Or even if we don't get motioned up and we're seeing someone stumbling around that just got tuned up on that round, we're going to come up and lay eyes on them. It's just like I'm looking at you right now. I'm going to look at your eyes and see.
So you'll come right up to the corner.
Right in the corner and look at them. That also sells this to the audience and sees that we're up there, we're concerned.
Right.
Right? So that kind of helps that natural flow of
Sure.
the fight, and hey, doctor's
That's
up
real.
there.
Yeah,
That's
he's
real.
up there. He's doing his job. He's not just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah,
he's
we're
paying
not
attention.
doing it for show, but
Right.
we're doing it because we're concerned about it.
Right. Have you ever had to go into the ring and address somebody like half knocked out or?
Yeah, multiple times. I mean, so I work boxing, I work UFC, I work Muay Thai, I work slap, which is you've probably seen some reels
Those
on
are
that. Lately.
just-
I know. I don't want to get into that. I'm part of the commission. I have to work it, but I've worked every one of those.
Wow.
So in Nevada, the physician cannot stop a fight. The sole arbitrator is the ref.
Wow.
So they can take our advice and say, okay, it's over
Right.
on the advice of the doctor. But in slap, we go up there. If the ref thinks it can keep going and I see something, I'll put an orange light up, come up there, and they'll take a timeout and say, no, this is over.
Yeah. Well,
So
I can
that's
see.
the only time that we can do that and really step in and do that. But everybody's so worried about slap and CTE and all the stuff you're hearing about it that it's that it's so barbaric. But You know what? The UFC went through this thing in 1997 or 4 or whenever they came out. They came to the same scrutiny.
The same thing, trying to get placed where you get convince people it's going to be okay. There can be some adjustments, and we'll get there from here.
And that's what we're
doing. What do you do after the fight? Do you have a responsibility to check out each fighter afterwards?
The lead has to stay until everybody's cleared out of the locker room. So, they're getting drug tested. They're hanging out. Deontay Wilder is having a party. I mean, literally, I worked his fight with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder too. He stayed in there until 1 in the morning, and he lost. But it was just that's just what they had, and I had to stay there until he left.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're getting more into it now. Now the people in the South are going, "Hey, what are you doing around here?" Are you starting to get bigger fights and called more often?
Yeah. So what kind of put me on the map was COVID. So COVID, as you know, there was no sports going on.
Right.
Dana White did a great thing. He built this bubble, the Apex, and he had fights happening when there was no sports going on. You remember he talked about Fight Island and doing something there.
Yeah.
He was going to have something at an Indian casino in California, Fresno, I believe, or something of that nature. But anyways, so we were brought down there almost every weekend.
Where were the Vegas guys? Where were the
Well,
Vegas
it was.
doctors?
I mean, they have jobs. Everyone has these, jobs, and they can't possibly do every one of them. But now that we're starting to get more reps, so the top rank at MGM had their own bubble as well. So it was boxing and MMA. So now I kind of got typecasted, even though I was a huge boxing fan, of working the UFC fights.
Because up until this, you've been like mainly boxing.
Right, because there were more boxing than UFC. But now when this happened, I was literally coming down on a Thursday, getting COVID tested. I got COVID tested, I think 110 times total. I was. So we would have to be sequestered in there, and this whole thing. I mean, it was a sacrifice, really. I mean, I was away from my family quite a bit, and but Marcy completely supported me. She knew how important this is to me, and was very supportive. So I'd come down, work those fights, and all of a sudden, here I am, sometimes coming down twice a week, because there was a Dana White Contender Series on Tuesday, the Ultimate Fighter Wednesdays, or what have you. I was coming down twice a week, and I was there because there was 2 venues going on the same weekend, and there was only so many doctors, so I was part of that.
How many times have you met Dana White?
I mean, I'm there all the time, but I don't...
Kind of in passing type of thing?
Yeah, it's almost like the Joe Rogan thing. We see him, but do I ever come into, hey, No,
but I bet if you showed Joe Rogan or Dana White a picture of you, they go, yeah, I think he's the fight doctor. You
Probably.
know who you were, they recognize because you're in proximity all the time.
Right. Dana White actually called me out on me stopping a fight one time, and then he ate crow. So it was kind of nice. Yeah.
I don't know much about that guy, but did you hear about Dana White's thing with Bud Light?
I did.
That just came out, and his theory on that. And I'll tell you what, I'm not saying I'm a huge MMA guy or even a Dana White fan. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. Seems like he's a nice enough guy, worked hard to get where he was, pushing this, took a lot of risks. But he was talking about Bud Light and how Bud Light got this rap, because of the Dana Mulvaney thing. And, we all know about the can and the story and the boycotting. That's old news. But he signed a contract. He signed an agreement with them of some sort to work with Bud Light and using them as a sponsorship. And his words, I watched the interview because he was on Theo Vaughn. And he said, look, he goes, okay, so you don't like that one thing they did. Do you know because they sent that influencer, that social media influencer with the picture? He goes, do you know they sent 100 different influencers the same thing? They had over 100 different influencers. Hey, here's your picture on our butt. Hey, here's your picture. Send them out to everybody. This one got a lot of attention for obvious reasons. But then he says, you don't think about all the stuff they have been doing for years with veterans. You don't think about all the stuff they've been doing in their communities and how many hundreds of millions of dollars, they've pumped into things that are super important. You hang them to dry on this one thing. And he goes, I don't even care. He goes, I'm over it. He goes, doesn't even care. If you want to do something with me, I'll work with who I want to. They want to do some good with us, then I'm going to work with them. I mean,
Right.
he kind of changed my mind a little bit. It's like, okay, I'm kind of over it too. You know, in the big picture, who wants to be judged on the one mistake or the one issue you did in your life? If you
Right.
really did something bad or you really had a misstep, who wants to be held accountable? Like, I don't always want to be remembered as the guy who did some fucked up thing when I was in, 10th grade or something. I wouldn't want to be hung out to dry for that. And that was his explanation. He goes, what do these guys got to do before you're going to move on? They do a lot of good. Even if you think that was stupid, look at all the good stuff.
So I don't really know him, but I can tell you that gives me a little insight into his character and the fact that he is, I think, a solid guy just for the fact that he's looking at things like that. You know, he does actually care about the fighters. You'll see stuff, he doesn't pay him enough, this, that, and the other. No, he's doing right. I mean, he's doing a good thing. You want to be involved with this, here you go, and he pays him pretty darn well.
I got to say that was probably the first time I've ever tried to sit down and listen to something that he was saying, because most of it he talks when he's on the news or something or in interviews, it's about his sport. I'm just not that interested in it as much as I would, like football or something. But now, from this moment on, I feel like I'm going to pay more attention to things he says and does, because if a guy like that I don't even know, this man has no influence over me whatsoever, can take within a 3 to 5 minute interview and plant a seed in my head. It's like, you know what? I mean, I'm not running out and buying Bud Light. I'm not a beer drinker, but he absolutely gave me a moment to reflect and go, that dude's got a point. I need to figure out a way on what I want to think and how I want to think about it, because if this guy can make a move and go, and he wasn't being a jerk, he was really being honest.
Yep.
Why can't I?
Yeah.
That was my experience. And, there's a lot of people that compare what we're doing with Joe Rogan. And I keep telling everybody, you got to stop, no, man, you need to be on the Joe Rogan show. And I'm like, okay. And I finally this is for a year and a half. Everybody kept saying they knew Joe Rogan and they were going to get me on the program. And I finally stopped everybody one day and I said, okay, I want you to think about Joe Rogan. Why on earth would he have me on his show? Why? It should be great. No, hey, you want to have me on his program for two dudes smoking cigars and drinking and just telling stories? It'll probably be. And I have seen some terrible interviews that Joe Rogan's had some horrible guests on, and I can think of, okay, I'd be better than that guy.
Right.
But if you just want to have two people shooting the shit, fine. But we're about the same age. We're not really going to tell each other anything new. And Joe Rogan gets people on that are specialty people in areas that know more than him about the moon landing or about aliens, or he has Elon Musk on. And then he does a lot of homework and he asks questions and he explores why that guest is here. What's
Right.
he going to ask me? He knows more than I do, or as much as I do. There's nothing to ask. Now, you should be on Joe Rogan. You could come in there and because he say, well, I was at this fight, and you're going to go, I was there too. Some of the same people, a lot of the same people, and the stories he doesn't know, That's
Right.
what's...
And he has opinions mid-fight on whether doctors should be stopping or something, the fight for a reason.
Yeah.
And so he could, it would be nice to have that conversation of like, this is what I'm thinking,
It would.
I don't know who he consults with on that, or even if he cares, but I think he does. I think he does want to know why. He's made comments before, which is rightly so. There was a fight that was stopped in New York, in Madison Square Gardens. It was Nate Diaz. It was for the BMF title.
Right.
So Nate Diaz gets a cut and bleeds at the face-off, right? This guy bleeds at the drop of the hat. He got a cut. Yeah, it was bloody. Yeah, but that's what Nate does, and it wasn't in an area that I didn't think it should be.
Your opinion.
In my opinion, right? So, Joe Rogan will make comments like, if that was in Nevada, that wouldn't have been stopped. And it's kind of funny because I actually have stopped a handful of fights for cuts. But the point is that we do it a little differently, and not just for
Right.
the gross factor.
Sure.
There's a lot of blood that has to be stopped. That's
Right.
not a reason to stop a fight.
I got to be perfectly honest about it. I was not a fan of Joe Rogan maybe even 4 years ago. I was kind of like I probably had a bad opinion of him for wrong reasons. And then the more popular he got, the more he was kind of in my face because I kept seeing him on reels and shorts and bumping into things on YouTube. And I started listening. Then I began listening to more of his stuff. And I'm telling you, I don't know whether we'll blame Joe. Joe matured over the past 5 years, and now I like him because he's grown up. But the truth is, I probably did. I probably matured in how I was processing some of his opinions and things he was saying. I've seen interviews where that guy tries to stand up and go, "Listen, I work on being humble." When you get a bunch of money, he goes, when you get a bunch of money, it's easy to be an ass and be that guy. He goes, he works at not being that guy. Now, some things like that I've heard give me a lot of respect, and I've changed my opinion on how I view him, and I love his program. But as far as being on it and everyone pushing me, first of all, I have no say-so in the matter. And I'm telling everybody right now, if you guys are going to do me a favor and you guys are going to, somebody knows Joe Rogan, not me, him. You get Dr. Zavala on there. I'm going to go because I'm going to carry his bags while we go there. He's not going without me, but I'm not going to be the guy sitting behind the microphone. That's for damn sure. But that would be a good conversation.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I see him hundreds of times. The last thing I want to do, and I know that he doesn't like to be approached by people, right?
Yeah.
That's the last thing he wants. Hey, what am I going to say to him?
Nothing. What can you say?
Nothing.
You have to wait until someone in his inner circle goes, "Hey, Joe, if we're looking for something to do, there's this guy over here," and they got to be pointing at you. That's the only way. I mean, in fact, I bet with Joe, and I'm guessing here, but I bet if anybody approaches him, he puts him on the do not call list right away. It's like,
Probably.
don't tap me on the shoulder, because you'd have 3,000 people a day doing that.
Yeah. So.
All right, we got a little sidetracked. Sorry about that. It was not a plug. This is a plug for the Joe Rogan Experience. So what you have gotten to a point where, like I said, getting to that point where you can put that license plate on your car because you've worked really hard. How long have you? 23 years now, hasn't it been?
21 actually.
So 21 years.
Oh, sorry, 21 on the commission, but yes, 23 years
since you were been grinding it out
as a fight doctor.
Now, if the commission in Las Vegas picks who comes and goes for what like that, if you say there's still about 13 doctors,
roughly.
Okay. Are you in the top 3 or 4 of who they choose? Are you in that rotation?
Lately.
All right. When did you feel like you had arrived? And I say that term loosely, but when did you sit down? Was it that one you told me about with Don King behind you? Was that when you knew I've worked hard enough and I got this spot?
Right. So I think you're absolutely right. And to do some self-reflection, when I worked that first fight, the first pro fight, yes, at that point I felt I arrived. But after doing it for so long, and 20 years goes by, and I'm getting passed up on big fights or getting thrown in the back for a big fight,
right.
I'll be honest, I get a little entitled a little bit, just like, wait a second, I've got
a lot of time,
almost the most seniority. I used to box. I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I do all of this so I can understand the fight game.
Right.
And but what does that matter to someone else who's picking it? They want the best person there, right?
Right.
So I have to trust in my boss, the executive director, to make those. And I will say, lately I've been, the last 4 fights I've worked, I've been the lead. I mean, it's just so I think I just want the trust.
Right.
I've already arrived by that first fight.
Sure.
I'm there.
Yeah.
But just and if you're not trusting me, I want to know why. What can I do better? What did I do? What did I show? I told you about Dana White, kind of calling me out on there and
right.
social media and saying he stopped that fight so quickly for a cut. He goes, I didn't understand why until the pictures got sent back to him. And he goes, I'll shut the F up now. And then he understood why.
Sure.
So
yeah. Well,
it was kind of cool.
One of those things, yeah, for sure. A little vindication without you having to say much.
Right. Oh, I didn't say anything.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't have to make a case. You just had to wait. So, all right, let's get into some particulars here. And let's break it down into two categories: boxing and other. Okay, who was your favorite guy to work with, to meet, to be the fight doctor for, either as a lead or second or whatever? Like, you're like, man, I got, like, for me it would have been like, oh my God, I got to be right near Mike Tyson. That would have been a thing for me. Pick someone boxing and someone not boxing that you're like, it was really cool to run into that person.
Again, it sounds cliche, but there are so many. But I've worked Mayweather fights, De La Hoya fights, but I have to say Tyson Fury was the coolest guy to work with, and he's just a personable guy. He just made things fun.
Yeah.
And to be the best in the world at what he does, that's also pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't really necessarily get starstruck. That's one of the things that
I asked it correctly. I said, who was cool? Who was like,
right.
Man, I got to hang out with that dude today a little bit.
Exactly. But the reason why I'm saying it is not because I'm starstruck. It's just because they've treated me with respect. And it's just a cool guy. You can tell I'd like to go out and have a beer with that guy. Right. So that's kind of what I mean by that's.
Sure.
Tyson Fury would be that guy.
Was there ever anybody that you were like, began to do your exam and you're like, oh my God, this guy needs to shut the fuck up. I can't wait to get out of here. Was there just some guy that irritated you?
Yeah, there's some Irish guy that in UFC that I'm sure you probably can guess. So,
well, you could have been having a bad day. You're not saying the guy's an asshole. You're just saying it was a bad day for the both of you.
I'll cut him some slack. He was, he cut some weight. He got down 145 pounds. He walks around 175. And he was looking pretty cut. He was looking in the mirror, and it's just me and him. There's no cameras. There's no cornermen. There was just me and him in a room.
Yeah. And you're there to do the exam.
Do his pre-fight physical.
Right.
If you can imagine 5 minutes of me watching him flex in the mirror. And me finally picking up my phone and just start scrolling through my phone, just like, okay, what do I say to him?
You say, dude, I got a job to do. Get your ass over here.
After 5 minutes, I did, because that felt like about 5 hours. So he's doing this. I finally locked eyes with him, and I looked up and I said, hey man, I got to do this. Like, I can't sit here and do this anymore. I can't watch you.
Yeah.
You got to sit down. I got to get. And he sat down and did it, and didn't really, say much about it. But I was just like, that 5 minutes was an eternity.
My God, that's so funny.
Yeah. And so, he was happy the way he looked, and that's okay.
I got it, but he could do that after you're gone, after you did your physical. And
100%.
You leave, then he can go back in front of the mirror all he wants. That's hilarious. Did you ever, because you love boxing and boxing, and then you're looking at the physicals you're doing. Do you do the physicals for both fighters at a match, or do they split up doctors?
They don't split them up. They just, whoever's ready comes. You're ready. Come on over. It's the main event. It's the first one on the fight.
Right.
On the fight card. Doesn't matter. I just take whoever's there.
So you can do. There could be a main event fight, and you will do the physical on both fighters.
I could, yeah, and I have done that. But it's just the luck of the draw when they show up. There's 4 doctors at the pre-fight physicals, so
anybody can do
it. Yeah, you raise your hand. I'm ready. Let's go.
Is there anybody, and you don't? How do you, boys? You don't want to say this and make people feel bad, but have you ever run into a fighter and you looked at them when they got there and you're like, oh my God, you do not look as in shape as I thought you were going to be when you got here?
Yeah, and that's
shockingly not good.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things on that. One is that they look like a physical specimen. They're ripped. That's one. There's some people that are more softer, and you kind of look at them and you're like, man, if this guy had his clothes on, I could probably take him, right? you get that in your head a little bit. But then there's the people that have cut so much weight and weren't smart about it. And those are the ones where you're like, all right, this is different, right? So one is more safety. One is like, you look at them and they're like,
look a little sickly compared to what you think.
Right, kind of a skinny fat boxer that gets in there, but they usually end up winning.
Did you ever have to stop a fight and like where you could feel like the call was on you? You had to stop the fight. You had to say something. I mean, I can imagine you. I'm making this up in my head, but I imagine you and the ref getting to a point where they're like, "Come over, check this guy's eye or check something," and you're looking at him going, "I'm gonna have to stop this," and you got a stadium of people going, "Don't you dare!" I mean,
Yeah.
did you ever feel a pressure in a situation?
Block it all out.
Really?
It's me. My heart rate is so high right before I think I'm going to get called in. As soon as I step in that cage or the ring, my heart rate comes down to resting heart rate.
Really?
Like, here we are. And I don't even, it's funny. I kind of bump into cameras sometimes because I don't even know where they are. Like, I'll turn around. I'm like, oh, hit my head on the camera or sorry. I'm focused on you. There's one fight I stopped for Sam Hughes, UFC. This is probably about a year ago. One of my pet peeves is that I see doctors wearing their stethoscopes and bringing pin lights in. And I don't mean to offend any ringside physicians. If that's what you do, that's fine. But in 23 years, I've never used a pin light inside the ring or cage. I've never taken or needed a stethoscope. It's just a pet peeve.
It's a look, man. You can tell.
No, I don't. You don't need it. Like,
tell
if you're
you're
going to
the
do
doctor.
that, what are you doing it for? So, my point is, I got in there. The lights are so bright.
Yeah.
Right. You're on cameras and this, that, and the other. So I get about this far away, as far as I am from you and I see this what's called a hyphema. It's blood in the anterior chamber starting to fill up in the eye.
Right.
And so I saw that, and I got closer. Called the fight for that. And I wasn't, it wasn't controversial. It was like, I walked out and everyone's like, well, what did you see? What was that?
Right.
Oh, she's got a hyphema. Oh, okay. Well, she went straight over and, there was no controversy. But I mean, that's it. But it wasn't, I don't care if someone has a bet.
But you could get close to calling a fight, and there's a stadium of people that are wanting you to let that go.
But correct. But I'm only going to do it. Here's what I'd say. I follow the fight, what's happening in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's getting tuned up, 9 out of 10 rounds, they're gone on every card. It's not going to happen. It's like, what are we doing? I get called in for a cut for that person who's getting beat up. Will I lower my threshold? Maybe. And I don't mean to, say this and like, I've seen, is this guy defending himself? I have to look at that. Are you defending yourself?
Right.
Are you hitting back, or are you just a punching bag?
Right.
Well, if the cut is bad, that's an easy out. Okay, we're done.
Right.
If the cut is marginal, I have to still stick with
What
the
if a
fact
guy's
that
getting beat in the gut and he may be suffering some internal damage? I mean, how do you even assess that?
it's those. If you get hit, I was actually an author on something called the Parable of the Body Shot. You can Google it and see it. I'm an author on it. And if you get hit, especially in the liver side, you're done. There's no one there on the ground. I mean, De La Hoya got hit with one of those from Bernard Hopkins. Ryan Garcia just lost from Tank Davis by one of those. I've been hit by him. I've knocked people out with those. It's unmistakable. It paralyzes you. You cannot come back from that. You can do nothing but think about what's happening and just breathing. That's it.
Right.
So there is that person can't even fake it. Can't even try to muster the energy to get through. So that's an easy one. So the body shots are, they're going to tell you they're out. The other ones with rocked in the head, a little glassy eyed, cuts, those are the ones where they're going to want to continue the fight.
How many referees have any sort of medical training at all? And the reason I ask is because, does a referee who's reffing a fight, is he looking at that with 30 years of just skill of I know what fighter looks like when he's going down, I know when to call the fight, I know this guy, I've been watching this guy fight since he was a kid, I know that I wonder if some of them have some sort of a medical training, a background or something to look at, or if they've at least been educated by doctors like you to say, hey, over the years, watch for this.
It's a great question because before every fight, before every boxing or MMA, whatever we're doing, whatever the Nevada State Athletic Commission sanctions, the ringside physicians and the referees meet. We powwow for 15 minutes, and we're going to go over scenarios, and we're teaching them what we look for.
Wow.
Now, but here's the thing. Even if they see something like that, we're telling them, hey, we'll get you off the hook.
Right.
Right? If you see something that's cut and dry, that guy's stumbling, he's taking
Sure.
shots, call it.
Right.
If you have any question, time out, call us in.
Sure.
So it gets them off the hook. And so they have so much to think about. Honestly, I would
Yeah.
not want their job. I
That's
would
a
not
tough
want to be
job.
a referee or a judge. They get crucified on social media. I don't want that. I love my job. I'd keep it. But we want to make it easier for them, and we work as a team. It sounds corny, cliche.
No, I got what you're saying.
And
When-
we're doing that. We're working with them. So they have a really good, we've had so many reps, and I think that's why the Nevada Commission, and California Commission has a lot of fights too, but we've had so many reps together that it's such a well-oiled machine
Right.
that we rarely see it break down.
That's good. I had no idea you met with the refs and you guys talked about
yeah.
stuff. So you're familiar with all those guys. They know you. You know them. You work together.
We're friends. They put their pants on the same way I do.
Yeah, and
they're cool
oh,
cats.
God, they got a job, man, to do that. The pressure, and if the world thinks they made a mistake,
Yeah.
I mean, boy, it's not,
Well, they beat themselves up too.
I bet they do. And they're part of they're part of the show. When they're under the lights, they're under the lights just as much as the boxers. People are watching them too. Don't mess up.
They are, and the sign of a good ref is to not be part of the show.
Yeah, it'd be nice to not even know the guy was there.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
All right. So in your tenure of doing these things, you're 23 years into it now. You're kind of at least being considered in the top circle. They consider you as much as they would do anybody else to take on these fights and to show up and do these things. Do you ever look forward, get a little bit of a kid anticipation when you know there's a big ticket coming? You're like, God, I hope they call me.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I've been a fan since I was a kid. So of course, I love it. I look ahead and I'm saying, God, I hope I get that one. I hope I get that one. And I just got asked to do the big UFC on December 16th. So I'm working that. I'm working next weekend at UFC.
Yeah, your wife said you're booked. You got some stuff going on.
Yes.
So, like I told you, we're going out to Las Vegas to the Red Rock for Gen X Talks. We're going to be out there on January 27th. If you can make it, if you can clear your calendar, you got something, or you can fit us in, it would be great to have you there. You made the barbecue down here, but if you can make it out there January 27th, it would be awesome to sit at the Red Rock, have a few drinks. Of course, you and I have hung out and had drinks before, but this is kind of fun too because there's a bunch of people that know who we are and just they want to talk about stuff and hang out.
Well, they want to talk to you, not me.
Well, believe me, there's more people that I told you about Josh. Remember Josh came to the barbecue and he was playing his guitar and singing out here?
Cool guy.
He texted me today. He goes, is Dr. McDreamy there? I go, he goes, tell him and his wife that I said hello and see if they remember me. I go, dude, they're going to remember you, Josh.
Oh, yeah.
He goes, well, if they remember who I am, please tell him I said hello. And I told you, he really watches what you do because he's a big fan also. So he's not the only one, Damon. There's other cats and chicks out there that would be like, want to see him, just say hello.
Well, I get it in the fact that my job is the coolest job on the planet. That's why I believe that, right?
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of jealous people saying, gosh, man, if I could only do that. Well, you didn't know what I went through to get here.
Well, they do now. We just talked about it. You go in and out for the better part of 23 years, waiting for your shot.
I've heard the I'll carry your bag thing, and if they only realize that to get into those big fights, it's so hard. If I don't have the right credentials, I'm not getting in.
Yeah, well, that's why I said if you ever go to the Joe Rogan show, I'm carrying your bag to that. I'll carry it in for you and just say he wants his bag with him the whole time, and I'm going to stand in the corner holding it.
He's my bodyguard.
That's right. That's how we're both getting in.
Yeah.
That's right. Joe can start your interview, and I can murmur comments from the corner until he tells me to leave.
That's right.
Oh my God. Well, if you can work that out, out. In fact, anybody listening, if this is before January 27th of 2024, go to the website, genxtalks.com. You can scroll around. There's tickets available. You can show up. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is our third annual, done it 3 years in a row. And this year we're trying to get, it looks like we've got, the peripheral cast, if you will. Iceman's going to show up. He's going to be hanging out there. If we can get you there, then the other one is Sun Valley Fox is going to show up. He's not too far away. He's going to come down for the weekend too. So I think this event, we're going to have almost everybody's staff related there. There's a couple that I'm still working on, but it's going to be, that's a class picture for me, where all of us are there one time.
Is that a Saturday night?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not working a fight, I'll be there. If I am working a fight, I'm working the fight. Maybe it gets out early, I'll be there.
Yeah. Either way, I think it would be good if you could come by. But even if not, we're going to be in town for a few days, so we'll definitely connect and go have dinner, do some stuff in between. Well, Entourage. Have you ever in the course of doing your job, you had to work around an entourage? Have you been to something where like Floyd Mayweather has 37 people with him or something?
It's usually boxing. MMA, it's not that way. The physicals are so streamlined. The fighter comes in there. There's nobody else around, usually maybe one corner person. For boxing, it's exactly that. We have a tent, a tiny little tent. We're doing our physical, and there's 10 people trying to force their way in. Our commission is really good. We have the inspectors that will try to keep that away, and they've done a pretty good job about that. But
do all the big boxers have entourages?
They do.
Wow.
They do, but the money is, I think, greater for the boxers. There's just more money in it for whatever reason.
For now, yeah.
For now, so I don't know. I don't know what that is. It just seems to be there. There's coattails. There's there's family members. I don't know.
Well, we see it, just as the public, we see it all the time, in the newspapers and magazines and cell phone people going by. I just wondered if it got in your way. Some of that has to just bleed right into what you're doing. Like you said, can you just give me 5 minutes to do my job here?
Well, the worst is when we start talking to the fighter, and I mean, other than if we need a translator or something, but if we're talking to them and their corner person answers the question, because I'll tell you, the corner person most of the time fills out their pre-fight medical.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sitting there going over with you on your medical, and they're looking at me with these blank eyes. I'm like,
what did I fill out?
What did I fill out? Exactly. So, I don't like that. And, but sometimes they help us,
Yeah.
What happened here? What went on in the gym? And I'm glad that, their trainer is there.
The guys that can speak your language.
Yeah. Hey, did this guy get knocked? Did he get knocked out? Tell me about that.
Did you, obviously, I don't think it would be professional in your capacity to walk up and say, once your physical's over, say, hey, Roy Jones Jr., can I get an autograph?
Can't do it.
You can't do stuff like that.
Can't do it.
But even though you would want, something from those guys, a picture, as a fan, you'd want to. Your professionalism doesn't allow it.
We sign. That's just something we do. It's our code. We can't do that for the Nevada Commission. We're not allowed to take pictures. Social media, we're not supposed to really do that. We don't want to fraternize. So I got over really being starstruck, early on.
Yeah.
So it's the fact that I get to be there and watch them. I mean, that's enough for me. But
you get a great seat.
Yeah, and I've met some of these. You usually stay in the same hotel as where we get put up for some of these guys, and so we'll see them at dinner and things of that nature. If they want to come up and maybe they'll recognize me as one of the doctor.
Yeah.
I did their physical. We'll talk, and that's cool. I really like that, but I don't do the picture thing. I don't really. If you look at my social media, there's really nothing on there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I know some other doctors that do some fights, and that's all that's posted. You would think that's all they do for a living.
Well, it's kind of funny, they sensationalize their job to the point of like, look what I get to do.
Right.
And I'm not saying they're not fans, but guys like you that are living their dream and that are hardcore fans and have it in their blood since forever. In your case, you were born with it, at least your lineage. Right. Those are the ones when they're not posting on social media, like, well, no kidding. They're a real fan. They love the sport. They're not out there posting with a Pepsi can going, hey, look what I got. Right. You're just doing the job the way you're trained to do the job and enjoying the sport in between.
And nor would I jeopardize my job.
No. Yeah. Why would you?
Why would I?
No. That's really something. And now you've come all this way. When you finally retire from the doctoring side, where no more patients and no more rounds at hospitals and all that stuff, and I'm not talking about any consulting or things you might do. How long do you think you could do this?
I've thought about that many times, and I have colleagues who are older than I am, in their 70s, and someone got up almost to their 80s, and they were able to work. So I think that, hey, I try to keep myself in shape, and for the reason, well, of course, to be around for my kids and my wife, but I want to be able to walk up those stairs and get in the ring and be able to do what I do. Not that it's a grueling thing, but mentally too. Hey, I'd have my wife be the one to tell me, hey, if I was slipping, I need someone to pull me aside and say, you're not going to make good decisions. I think about those things.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm always going to want to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't want to go in and make a mistake.
No, you don't. I could, but like I said, I've known you for my entire life. And if I didn't think that you were a man of good character and making high quality decisions, you don't just take things for granted. You absolutely put time and energy. Like one of the things you mentioned, even in today's interview, we're talking just in the podcast, talking about stuff is when you started grinding out doing those early fights in the amateur level, first thing you said was, okay, I went and learned and I read and I studied. I wanted to get the aspect of the boxing part of the medical. I already had the medical down. I was doing it. I graduated. I got my degree and I'm working it. But you took the time to go learn the craft, learn the trade from that aspect. You already had the boxing aspect down. You did that. Then you had the medical down. And then you said you went and learned, what are the finer points of how this job curtails. If you know how many people don't do that, even there's bricklayers that don't do that.
Right.
They don't take the time to go that extra step to learn a nuanced part of their field, of their area.
So that I'd beg the question of, really, why are they doing it? Why would you do it?
Well,
right? I mean,
it's a job and they enjoy it.
Well,
but if
sure.
you say, okay, now, but can you build me this in, we're going to build this Catholic church. Like, I don't really do those kind of archways and stuff. But when you love what you're doing and you're learning the aspects and you're learning the nuances, and I mean, let's face it, when you decided to be a fight doctor, when that was a direction, what a narrow choice. I mean,
right.
that was one small, you're
N of one, Ferdy Pacheco. Yeah.
You're like, when you're saying that's like a bricklaying guy saying, well, do you build? Yes, in concrete, yeah, but I don't do sidewalks. What do you do? Well, the steeple. I just do the steeples. That's my thing. It's like, well, that's a pretty narrow, vision of a construction guy. Yeah, that's my niche right there. I'm just going to build the steeples. But that's what you did. Yeah. You picked that one thing. It's absolutely incredible, and all the stuff that you had to overcome to get there. I mean, you couldn't read the stuff and retain it the way, so you found a way around that, and just thing after thing, and then you get not stuck in Reno, but you're separated from the South, and you grind out the amateur circuit anyway. You love the sport, and you started putting in the time. You're punching that clock, and then you act surprised when you show up on the radar of the commission. Well, what'd you think, man? You're doing it. You're doing the work.
Oh, I know. I was definitely surprised. I didn't know my name was getting listed every time. So that was like I said, man. This is a dream come true. I love what I do. Got a permagrin. I've got a supportive family that allows me to do this and be away. I mean, I love when my wife will come down with me to Vegas and kind of treat it like a staycation. And she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so she gets it. She won
that 2 months ago. Didn't she win that championship?
She did. She's the Masters World champ.
She's holding up a trophy bigger than she is.
That's right. So she's into more, I would say more into UFC because she goes, because there's more jiu-jitsu based on that. But, she'll come down and I've got her into some of the fights, and it's been
not
great.
A lot of ground game in boxing.
No, if it is, that's a really sloppy fight.
Yeah, no kidding. If you guys are mopping the floor with each other, literally, something's not going how it's supposed to.
Right.
Well, Damon, you've been a friend of mine, and obviously my wife and my family. We've known each other 50 years. I love you, and I can't thank you enough for taking time to do this, because I know you don't like to be on camera. I know you don't like to be recorded. You enjoy talking about the sport. I'm thoroughly impressed that you forced yourself to sit here and endure an hour with me, because it was really important. Not only for, I love hearing the stories. I'd love to hear more. I want to do this again with you, but you're really helping out the channel, because as we're moving into that radio station thing, I'm going to, with maybe perhaps a little bit of motivation and renewed invigoration from your story, I'm going to keep pushing to make this radio station work. I want it to be, I'm not saying I want to be the Art Bell of what we're doing, but I really think there's a niche for something that's not quite the Joe Rogan thing, but a little something different, and I want to seize it if I can. So you being on here helps out a ton, and so thank you for doing that.
Well, I appreciate you and inviting us down here. This is great, and I love talking about boxing and MMA, so this is easy.
This is easy for you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in again. I'm going to switch over. Listen, you guys, I got to go. I actually have another show that I got to get ready for pretty quick here. But you guys, I told you this was going to be worth the wait. I warned you. I told you in the beginning that you're going to go through the dry read stuff because I'm demanding it. But if you stick it out to the very end, this is going to be one of the interviews you're going to replay over and over and share with your friends. It was a lot of fun. Dr. Damon Zavalli, he's up in Reno, does a lot of stuff, man of many hats, a man of many parts, and now he's one of the fight doctors down in the Las Vegas area too. He's a cool cat. Really appreciate him coming in. Thank you guys for listening. If you had an hour of your time to waste, well, why not waste it here with Gen X Talks? What else you got going on? Anyway, thanks for listening in. Wherever you are and around this planet, AM, FM, Sirius XM, or perhaps you're listening in on the Armed Service Radio Network. Remember two things: wherever you go, there you are. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side. That's right. I ain't afraid. I said it.
Life is